Hi everyone, I'm Mike Hogue, and this time I'm going to use the transformation compass on a landscape transformation project. So I've used the compass before. I know that I want to do some kind of a project in the coming months, create a transformative adventure to make progress on the landscape. And I'm going to use this to kind of just help me make some decisions about it. So far I'm just thinking, well, I want to have a garden. So maybe that's going to be, maybe I'm thinking like that's going to be an annual garden or something. I don't know. So I haven't really put much thought into it yet. We're going to get started. So again, looking at this as a process, the whole thing, this symbol represents investing in connection to community and nature. So this is what we do, is invest in community and nature and connection to them. Now, this symbol also has a bunch of nested symbols inside it that give me direction. The first represents mind and having a process in mind. The next represents creating a nurturing, natural environment for myself. The next is having a solid base of having my needs met and making progress, having a tangible way to make progress in my life towards that. The next is having a path of self-development and a path of working on creating a permanent culture, a path of community good. Finally, I want to make sure that I'm being guided and being skillful about this, so I'm doing it in a way that makes the world better for everyone and not just makes everything a wreck for my own happiness. And finally, this idea of transcendence, that I'm working, that the whole thing is about me having a path as growing as a person. So, turning to this idea of the garden, the first thing here represents mind, making sure that I have a path of working on the mind. And that's even included right here in this idea of making the garden. So this tells me, it gives me some direction about how I want to go about doing that work. That as I am working on this project, I'm doing it in a way where I'm not like rushing around, making a wreck of my brain, being anxious about it, getting worried about it. But instead, I'm keeping this whole, I'm using the project, the adventure, as a way to practice this right mind, as a way to practice being focused, being relaxed, being energized, and being content and happy and cheerful about it. So the whole gardening process that we're going through, I can keep reminding myself that the point of this adventure, and every time I go to the garden to do this and do work, I'm focusing on using that as an opportunity to build the right kind of mindset. Next, I'm focusing in on this idea that I want to create a beautiful, natural, nurturing environment for myself. So already this is kind of shifting my thinking about the garden, right? How do I feel about the landscape now if I'm starting out in the landscape? Does it have social space? Does it have a sense of spiritual wealth there? And I'm just kind of getting started, so it really doesn't have any of these things yet. Does it have a sense of security and safety? So I'm moving away from the idea that I want to jump right into like having a market garden or something like that. And instead, I want to focus in on building some of this first, because I know if I do that, that's going to support me in having a better garden long term, even if my main goals are productivity. Continuing on, we come here to this idea of having a path of personal development in doing this project, and something that's going to build community good. This is starting to focus my idea in around how I'm going to structure my action, right? And I'm also really focusing in here on needing to develop some of these lower physiological needs in the landscape. So maybe I'm going to focus in on some security crops right away. Something like Jerusalem artichokes, potatoes, maybe some nuts in there, some carbs, some calories, so that I'm building this more secure environment for myself right away with one of my first gardening projects, one of my first landscape transformation projects. On the other side, I'm seeing here this call towards community involvement. So maybe as I plan out my adventure, a part of it is going to be able to bring some people into it. Maybe I have some friends that I've been thinking of who want to learn about permaculture, and it might be a great opportunity once I get into a point where I'm starting to do some of that work to make sure I'm inviting some of them over to be a part of this process so that I'm using it to connect both with nature and with community. I'm starting to get an idea of what's taking shape. And, again, maybe it's something like this. Maybe it's something where I need to start building this, a feeling of enclosure, a feeling of place with this. And now I'm coming down to this area of the solid base again, so that I really am thinking I want to structure this first early project around building some of these things, this sense of safety, this sense of community place. And this is one of the reasons why often one of the first projects that I do with people is like a hedgerow. So I'm starting to think maybe that's the step one, is getting some feeling of enclosure in some space so I can create this community space. I can start to create a beautiful sense of space. It's something that a lot of people are interested in doing because it's such a common project. That this could really help me connect with community in a major way too. Okay, so I've made up my mind. I'm gonna, jump in, and first thing, I'm gonna try to plan out a hedgerow. It's gonna have some calorie crops built in, so it's gonna be on a guild with some potatoes and Jerusalem artichokes to fill it in. Gonna have some hazelnuts in there, so it's definitely like an early security, a food security hedgerow. It's also going to keep wildlife out at a point and make sure that I can have a productive garden. Okay, so now I have a goal. I have something set up. And again, I'm not thinking about what am I going to do for the whole landscape, and I have to have my ideas all perfect and have this perfect design before I jump in. The idea of the compass is transformation. Starting with where you are now, the things that are going to have the biggest direct impact on your life and your quality of life, and then figuring out how to get it done, creating a transformative adventure around that. So this is learning action in which we learn and grow by getting stuff done. Too often in like permaculture, we focus entirely on creating some kind of a design, and then we never get to the action. Here, the point is, as we do the design, boom, we're building learning action into every step so that we grow and the landscape grows. So we start with this cause to quest, a problem to be overcome or a specific way life can be enhanced. We kind of have that cause to quest. I want to create this community building, friend building adventure to create a hedgerow that's going to be kind of a food security hedgerow. So that's my cause to quest. Next, it needs to capture this peak of motivation. It's something that's going to excite me for the next few months, and I'm going to be really stoked about doing this thing. This is going to put the wind at my back and make sure this project gets done. Now, sometimes I might feel like, well, this is a great idea, but maybe it could use a little something more to keep me interested or excited. Oh, maybe I'll add like an aesthetic element. Maybe I want it to be a goth hedgerow. So I'm going to create a sort of goth-themed hedgerow that's going to, or something like that, maybe a color scheme. In this case, just having the hedgerow I think is enough, although I'll probably make sure that it's aesthetic too. If it needs something more to get that motivation for you, then you can find what it is. Like, does it need more of a social element? Do we want to create like a little hedgerow creation club locally and start a little group and have a little class? Or moving into the spring, like, hey, let's all get together. Anybody else want to design a hedgerow? Let's do it together. So here we go. I've got that peak of motivation, check. The next thing, does it fit into the solid base? Absolutely. We don't have to adapt it to make sure it does that. I've got the solid base fit into this. Next, it has to have a specific and achievable goal. Well, I'm going to need to figure out what the hedgerow looks like. That's one sort of sub-goal, but then this also has a pretty hardcore goal, actually getting this thing planted and established. So, in fact, I'm not going to worry about establish for now. I'm going to worry about just getting it designed and planted. And finally, it has a journey's end. Well, I know this is going to come up in the spring. The end of this planting season is really going to be about May. So, this one transformative adventure for creating a community building security hedgerow, food security hedgerow, is going to take me through the spring. This is going to be one of my major projects for my life that I'm working on, and I've got a plan for it. It has an end to it. I'm going to learn a lot about building this kind of hedgerow and enhance my knowledge of this, and I'm going to do something that's going to get start my landscape transformation at the same time. So finally, everything that I do with this is going to follow this ethic of making sure that I'm doing it in a way that makes the world a better place. And finally, it's going to have this idea of transcendence, that through this process, I'm going to be working on, transforming or transcending my own limits, learning the things that I need to learn that are holding me back from being successful with it, and grow through this whole project on a personal level. And this will be a kind of daily reminder of that. So there it goes. I have a plan for something that I'll be working on. I can figure out about how much time I want to devote to that. And so now I have kind of two, if you watch my other video, two kind of projects I'll be working on. All right, thanks.